Okay, everyone, it's 1 o'clock. The recorders have started, so we're in session. Thanks for coming. My name is John Jorgenson. I work right here at Rutgers Camden, and this is something beeping. Is that us or somebody back here? Okay. This is a digitization workshop. Here at Rutgers, for a while now, it's a couple years long program, and it's going to go on for a couple of more years, is amongst the other digital collections that we developed here, we've been working very hard on throwing away our government documents collection because we don't have any room for it at all. And it's something that I've talked here in CALI about before. What we're doing before we actually put it in the trash is send it through the scanners. And so what we're trying to do is to make a long-term, reliable digital collection of our government documents, and to take an unfortunate situation of having no space and having to heavily weed material into making it available to the entire world on the internet, and also saving it in a durable format. So we're going to be talking about that today. Like I said, I personally have talked about this before at other CALI meetings and at AALL. What we're going to do today specifically is I've actually been asked a couple of times, you've talked about why it should be done, basically how to do it, etc., but you've never actually shown anybody how to do it. So today, we've brought the scanners down, we've brought a scanning machine down, the scanner software is going to be displayed here, and to the extent that we're going to use this computer over here, we're going to show you things like quality control, etc. We're doing something really foolish. We're actually going to try and do in real time, as we explain what we're doing, a complete digitization job on a document and explain how we do it and why we do it. What I would like to try to do is attempt to do this and to get all of our main talking done in maybe a half an hour. Hopefully it'll work that way. And then we can have a discussion of any questions you might have, any variations on the theme. Because one of the things that I would like to stress right now is that we're going to show you how we work with this particular material. One of the major things that we have found is that how you do digitization, what formats you use, what machines you even use is highly dependent. I mean, to do it well, it's very highly dependent on the material itself. So what we're going to show you today is really dependent on the kind of material we're going to be showing you today. Other things need to be treated differently. So if you have questions about other kinds of materials, why would we do it that way as opposed to another way, these are all going to be questions that are going to be, well, of course, highly relevant. But again, it's going to be very dependent on the material, so that's something that we really ought to be talking about. So, in order to tell you exactly how this works, I have two colleagues that I've been working with for years and that really get all of this work done on a daily basis. And they are primarily responsible, as far as I'm concerned, with the 2.5 million images we have online in this project right now. And that is Forrest Rowland and Elspeth Abel. They are going to do a lot of talking today about how material gets selected and prepared for digitization, and then Elspeth is going to get up and talk about quality control and how the stuff gets handled and to get ready for processing. And then I'm going to start talking again, and I will talk about post-processing programs. Didn't realize I was going to do an alliteration there. Post-processing programs of how we actually get the material finally prepared and put on the internet, and what happens with the archival copies. And if our foolish experiment here actually works out, we're going to have a document scanned here, and you can watch it getting scanned and prepared as we go through this. And by the end of this hour, we will have a document on the internet that you can look at. So, what we're going to do right now, since I didn't want to bring down the paper cutter because it's huge and very heavy, and well, it's not the least interesting because it's fun. It's a big $400 Ball paper cutter. But just to save a little bit of time, we have a small pre-cut book. Now, of course, what we're doing in this particular collection is we're digitizing congressional documents. They're committee prints and hearings. Of course, this is a particularly small hearing, just so we can maybe get this one done in 1 hour from soup to nuts. A lot of them are 500, 1,000 pages. Some are multi-volume sets. So that's going to figure into a lot of what we're going to be talking about as far as formats and how we handle the material. This one's small, but as you can see, it's already been sliced in the bulk paper cutter, and it is now a nice stack of sheets. This is the machine we use, and people do need to know about this. These machines came out, about 7 years ago when they first came on the market. This one happens to be a Panasonic, if you want to write this down, a KV-S2026C. It is a fabulous machine. We've had some for several years now. The ones we originally bought years ago are only finally starting to wear out, and even they're repairable. They work very well. We found them to be very reliable. I know Bell & Howell has a very similar model that I think is at about the same price point. They're duplex scanners. They do high resolution, and they cost about $1,000 a pop for the scanner, which for what you're getting is a really nice bargain. I know for Panasonic, the very next model up is exactly the same box that runs at pretty much the same speed, but the salesman at Panasonic tells me it has a higher duty motor, a heavier motor in it that can actually run 24 hours a day for an extra $1,100. So you can buy 2 of these. So that's actually the way we've been orienting how we do things. And of course, this is a law library, and we've been doing a great deal of the actual scanning with work study students to cut down on labor costs. And so, you know, having a bunch of these machines all running half the day is pretty much how they work, and it works out well. The main point also to take away from this too is the cost issue involved. We're going to have one person scanning one document right now, but we have 3 of these machines functioning. And students, not so much, but when we have a full-time person who's on this project working, say if Woody's doing this or Elspeth is upstairs working on the scanning machines, they will typically have all 3 of these machines running at once, and then they'll be doing either cutting and preparing new materials or doing quality control while the machines are running. And you'll see how well the machine runs. I'm the one who cut this, so I didn't do it particularly well, as Woody's going to point out to you. But assuming $18 an hour for a worker, and assuming somebody does one 400-page document at a time, so no multitasking that I just described at all, this still works out to about 2.3 cents a page. That's assuming no multitasking and assuming $18 an hour. If you've got work study students who cost your institution $2 an hour, or if you have somebody who's really good at what they're doing and is committed to the project and is running 3 machines and doing quality control or cutting materials at once, you can see where the cost of this kind of project is headed. anybody can afford to do it. And we're going to show you how today. So, to start off with, so we've got the cut book, and I will load it up for you. Oh, okay. Bring your mouse over. Okay, now this is native software that came with the Panasonic scanner. It works pretty easily, and it works pretty easily with the Twain driver that comes with it, so it's fairly flawless that way. But what we're doing here is we've standardized on Library of Congress card number as the easiest to work with, most unique kind of number that will be attached to each one of these documents. So Elspeth is now putting in a directory name, which is going to be the LCCN number, and setting the file name, which is going to be the LCCN number as well. And then you can see here, the string is the LCCN number, and then on the end of it is going to put a sequential 4-digit number. So it'll be 0001 and 2 as you scan. The software also comes with a series of selections on what the trigger to give a new file name is going to be. In this case, every single page is going to get a new number because every single image is going to be a separate file. That's very much because of the kind of material we're working with here. Smaller documents, reliably small documents, 10, 15 pages or less, we wouldn't do it this way. We'd have all the pages in one file. But this stuff is big, one per page, so we could also do it with separation sheets or just end of scanning. This is going to be every page an image. And later on, I'll talk about things like, almost there. Later on, I'm going to talk about things like, well, actually, I can do it now while we get this ready. Talking about things like dots per inch. Again, a nitty-gritty thing that has to be paid attention to. We negotiated with the library, or actually with the FDLP, about how we were going to do this while we were negotiating to withdraw our collection in bulk from the depository system. And what we eventually settled on was 600 dots per inch, black and white. Grayscale starts increasing your file size very dramatically and very fast. If you read literature about OCRing, which we do OCR this material, OCR works pretty well at a clean 300 dots per inch. The problem with that is these particular documents, again, they have typically somewhat smaller print than 10 or 12 point type, and the footnotes can get as small as 6 points. So in this case, we've got really tiny fonts to deal with, and 300 dots per inch won't do it. So in this case, we did a lot of experiments, and we worked with the FDLP, and we settled on a good compromise of 600 dots per inch, which is what these will be scanned at, because you can blow that up, and those 6 point type footnotes will be legible. And they'll OCR, which at 300 dots per inch, a font that small is just going to be unreadable gibberish. So again, if you've got documents that are just 10 point type, then 300 dots per inch is really sufficient, and this machine would function much faster, actually. So now again, this is to, a little bit theater, but also just to show you what's going on. At this point, the machine's running, everything's being saved straight up to our server to be ready for processing once we're done. And while this goes on, I would like to introduce Forrest Rowland to talk about material preparation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I wear a couple hats around the law library here. I work at nights primarily. I'm the clerk of government documents, microfiche and microfilm. Also have a backup role in circulation. I have a continuing role in the digitization project. Formerly, I was heavily engaged with the print document workflow, but more currently, I'm now primarily working with downloaded documents from the GPO. In that former phase, I was charged with the responsibility for the production of print materials to be ready for scanning, and the conceptualization and implementation of the workflow and the processes which support that task. While the culmination of that task is the uneventful and accurate scanning of the print materials, there is a lot that runs up to that ideally quotidian and prosaic process. Here's a quick overview of that workflow with a few brief side trips into crucial details. Our process with these government documents begins with the extraction of the targeted print materials from the stacks and their transport to a holding shelf in proximity to the processing area. All of these documents must be inscribed on their title pages, not the covers, with their corresponding LCCN, or if not, if it's an item that has not been cataloged by the Library of Congress, with a quasi-LCCN that John came up with. Reason not on the covers is because when you break the document down, where does the cover go? Into the trash. And then when it comes up time to put the information in to develop the file, you won't have the number. So you've got to backtrack. That we learned by bitter experience. This brings us to the work area itself and the tools employed therein. The work area needs to be well lit and of a sufficient size and accessibility to both facilitate the process and to reduce the physical stress and potential repetitive stress injuries, which are real. I am genetically predisposed to have some trouble in one of my shoulders here, and that has sometimes haunted me if the height of the counter that I'm working on is not appropriate for the stress that I actually have to exert to cut substantial documents. The tools should be the best that you can justify in your budget. They need to be durable. They need to be easy to use and easy to regulate and to adjust. Now, why do they need to be so durable? Well, 2.5 million images is probably a good benchmark to look at. You have to chop up a lot of documents to get to 2.5 million images. They also need to be, easy to maintain and regulate. The training of the operators should be thorough, embracing not only the normal functioning, but also the ability to recognize developing problems and malfunctions. And I can't emphasize this point strongly enough. Maintenance of the mechanical equipment is absolutely crucial. Bad maintenance, you're going to get bad results in your preparation of the materials, and even a potential total work stoppage if it breaks down unnecessarily. Now, what we require for our duplex scanners in this program, not necessarily in a program that you and your institutions might run, where you might wish to preserve the document and use some other form of scanning. But for our purposes, we require a nice, consistent flow of single sheets that result from the breakdown of those documents that come in various forms. I brought exemplar forms of those documents, anything from a nice small little guy like this to a heavily stapled document like this that requires special treatment, to a document which is a simple glue-back binding inside the cover, to one that's glued but also sewn-in signatures in some of the older documents that we're dealing with, on up to the glory days when we actually hard-bound a lot of our documents, and that requires certain other kinds of processing. I'll be glad to discuss any fine points about solutions we came up with that might be relevant for your concerns later on. That's too much detail for right now. Here are some of the bugbears that we've learned to look at that affect the quality of the individual sheets that we ideally come up with here. Tattle tapes. Tattle tapes are hard to deal with sometimes. It depends upon where they are, how closely in whether you're going to slice them off when you cut off the document, whether you're going to go partway through it, or whether you'll miss it entirely. They were always a pain in the neck, and they always cause trouble in the scanner because when they feed through and they're still attached, you get a double feed. After a little bit of thought about this, the old hunt, search, think you got it, run it through the scanner, discover you didn't, was not a good choice. So I came up with an idea that you can use your circulation magnetizer, demagnetizer for security purposes that you use with those tattle tapes to detect the presence of those tattle tapes in the documents that you have ideally rid of the tattle tapes. You do a bunch of them, you take them down there, run it through, light lights up, missed one, find it, pull it out, you're ready to go. Another bugbear that can happen, particularly with those simple glue-back bindings, is glue incursions, where the hot glue, when it's bound, has squirted up a little bit between the pages and bound them together just as badly as the tattle tape, except actually in some ways worse, because instead of a double feed, it may actually rip the document apart as it's going through the scanner because it's only partially attached along the side. You have to learn to look for the telltale signs of discoloration along the cuts, and a little bit of fanning will sometimes reveal things that you might have missed otherwise. Ragged and irregular edges. When we have particularly hardbound volumes that have been sewn in, the edges have already been cut off and the whole thing has been bound in there by a sewing process. If you don't set your cut, you may result in a bunch of little perforations and holes that impede the good flow through the machine. That again can be corrected with proper technique, but it's not always easy. Another one that will really get you is the presence of maps and charts, fold-outs that are bound into the document. Sometimes they're pretty hard to spot, but a little bit of fanning before you even cut, you can sometimes find the presence of those things. There are workarounds for those to insert them into the file after the fact, but you don't want to hand it to a student and have them run it through and have a disaster happen in the middle of the scan. Well, after you've done all that scanning, which you just had an illustration of, you also then need to have a holding zone for your prepared materials. Things that you have chopped down, you're ready to go, you put it there. You have to have a holding zone for materials that you have in fact scanned. You also need to have a holding zone for identified problems prior to them going through a scanning process and resulting in all kinds of chaos. You need the signage to distinguish each zone and training for the workers in how to respond to each eventuality. John mentioned the multitasking of invested workers. My personal experience, if I was engaged upon chopping up documents while simultaneously working on multiple scanners if they were available to me, I could regularly power through up to 6,000 pages a night, which knocks it down pretty fast. But at the same time, I was preparing documents perhaps 2 or 3 times that number of pages to be ready for the next scanner, whether it was me or a student worker or somebody else working on a weekend, something like that. So you could get ahead of it, have a nice backlog of materials ready to go. So that's all I have to contribute right away, but happy to answer any questions later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Woody. Okay, at this point, so we've got the material ready to go. We've actually scanned a document. The next thing that needs to happen is we have finished this scan, and then we need to do some quality control. And so we're actually going to do that right now up on this screen. Where did we save this one?
It's in just regular GDoc.
Okay. It's there, but it's a Windows issue. It's not updating. No, you know what? We're not going to do the quality control on this so that you can see it because we have a Windows issue. Let's see if we can bring it up here. Wait.
I can fake it.
Well, start talking.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm just going to run through the process that I do when I do quality control. And I'm just going to start with one that's just up there, but it's not the one we just did. But it's just like the one we just did. So first I would just grab a document from the area that Woody mentioned where things that have been scanned is. Makes sense. And I grab it from the physical copy so I have it in front of me. And then I would open up the document and look it over. I usually just run it through thumbnails. You can get a lot of information just from looking at a thumbnail. One of the first things that I do, besides just checking these pages look okay, they're not perfect, they have a little bit of a line here, but it depends on how persnickety you want to be. They're definitely legible. One of the first things that I do is figure out the pagination. Obviously the tip numbers on the documents don't match with the actual numbers on the pages, so I always have to figure out what the difference is. So looking at this one, I can see that this is the cover page and some introductory pages, and here's where the actual body of the material is. This is page 1. Take a look, make sure. I don't know if you can see it, but that's page 1. So this is tip number 5, so the difference is 4. I don't know if this is going to make sense if I'm translating this properly from my head, but so this is important to know so that you can determine whether pages didn't go through the scanner properly, if there's a double feed, if, like Woody said, there's a towel tape stuck, or the glue, or sometimes 2 go in at once. We don't know why. So the difference is 4 for this one. So what I do is, while I'm looking at the general quality of the pages, I also check to see that the pagination stays the same all the way through. So for instance, I'll look at a random page, and this one's 44, the tip is 48, so logic tells me that every single page has gone through. Rather than opening up every single tip and looking at them to make sure that the pages are sequential and complete, it's a shortcut that's really handy. So I'll go through the document. This one's thankfully short. And if it was longer, I would pretty much every 30, 40 pages, I would go and check the pagination again as I'm looking at the quality of the actual images. And here at the end, we have page 74, which is page 78, so it's good. So this is one that's actually okay, and you can go on to the next step. And that's pretty much what we would do with one that's thankfully trouble-free. There are a couple here that I can show you that have problems, typical problems that we've experienced with our machines and our material. Here's one. As the pages load. You can see terrible wonkiness. Black bars or black boxes. We have different terms for it. Seems to happen with a sensor problem, where the pages aren't being read by the sensor properly. And really the only thing you can do, obviously, is start over. Sometimes if it happens at the end, you just rescan the very end. Make sure you're getting the numeration right, which you do with the RTIV. There's a place where you can change the number so that you can continue where you left off. And that's really the only thing you can do with something like this. Fortunately, this doesn't happen that often, but it's obviously a big mess. Another one that we've come across more recently are just random blanks. Just sort of, this one actually follows a semi-pattern, but sometimes they're just completely random. And you can see these aren't actual blank pages in the text. They're pages where the information didn't come through. Here's page 157. This would be 158. Here's 159. That's one quick way to make sure it's not just a blank page. And in that case, you would go in, if it was one like this, you might actually just go in and rescan those pages and paginate them again so that they fit. Or you might just do the whole thing over. It's a lot easier sometimes to just start over. And then this one is not as easy to see, but sometimes we get, and this one's a milder case, but sometimes it's worse, we'll get vertical lines in the page, and it's usually caused by dust particles in the rollers as the pages are going through. And the best bet for that is to, actually John would be able to talk about cleaning the rollers and actually sometimes maybe replacing the rollers if they get really bad. And this again, you would just want to isolate which pages, it's usually alternate pages that get it, and you would just have to rescan the whole thing, which we do, and it happens, but it doesn't happen too often, so that's good. And then the other problem was what Woody was mentioning. If you found a document where the pagination wasn't flowing, there was a discrepancy, you kind of have to just go in and find it, which takes a long time. This one I found, so I don't have to waste your time finding it. Here's page 15, and then the next page is 18. And that would be in the case of towel tape getting stuck and two pages run through at the same time, so 16, 17 are missing. And in a case like this, what we would do is, all you have to do, it's actually an easy fix, is take those pages, obviously, pull the towel tape out carefully, rescan those two sheets, and then how we insert the missing pages is you would renumber them, and to get them to fit into the sequence, this one is tip number 21. I would make the two pages that fit in between 21 and 22, 21A and 21B, so that when people would access the material, they go into the place where they belong. So that's a pretty easy fix, unless you have lots of those. If glue happens, sometimes it's 6 pages that get stuck together, so it can be a little messy, but not too bad to fix. So, I guess in case people want to know about the timing, it's kind of tricky because some computers are faster. Sometimes, some days it would run faster, but the main timing issue is just, for me, how long it takes the thumbnails to come up. Sometimes it's really slow. This is working really nicely. Sometimes I sort of have to wait a while for the pages to come up to actually look at the document. But usually about a 100-page document would take about 3 minutes to do if there are no problems from start to finish. And if there are problems, say a quick one like a rescan of 2 pages, it might be three minutes again to just get that through and do the numbers. If it's a rescan, obviously, if it's hundreds of pages, it's going to take a little longer. But it doesn't take that long to get them fixed. And then after that, once something's determined to be good, and John can tell you more about this, there's a Perl script that we run that will attach a mark record to the document, so it has all the metadata that's required for the next steps, but again, John will tell you about. I think that's it.
I wanted to make sure that things actually got finished, so I apologize that I ran a couple of things while we were talking. The scan was done, and we talk now about doing quality control and reviewing the images on how quickly and the kinds of problems you can typically have with this kind of scanner, with this kind of material, to do a good review of it. Typically what we would do at that point, okay, this is done, and what I did while we're doing there was process the document. I'm going to sit over here and show you what I've been doing. The first thing that got done was, in order to prepare a good metadata record for this, of course, these are government documents. We have them in our catalog. The Library of Congress has wonderful MARC records for all of these things. And so the first thing we want to do when we're really ready to process these documents is to get a really good MARC record. And with these, we're getting them from the Library of Congress using a little program called Get MARC. And that's grabbing the MARC record right now. And here's what it looks like. So what is happening now is when I downloaded that record, talking and typing has never been a strong suit for me. This is what we actually downloaded from the Library of Congress. It's a cool little script. Anybody can have it if they want. The problem with downloading from the Library of Congress is that they have timeout sessions, and they hide a session ID and a process ID code in that god-awful long URL that you get when you do a search on the Library of Congress catalog. Well, the session ID and the process ID are embedded in the main search page. So if you write a little script, and I'm not going to show you the little script. Some people might like to see the little script. Most of you would not. But what the script does is it basically downloads the regular main search page from Library of Congress, which comes down quite nicely and has the session and process ID embedded in them. It grabs the session and process ID and sticks it into a URL along with the LCCN search, and then sends that out and asks for a MARC record. In that case, instead of getting back a search failed message, which we'll always get otherwise, you actually get a nice MARC record. And I filter it through to take out all the HTML, and we have a beautiful MARC record that when we then process the document, the first thing that happens is we change it into RDF, which is machine readable and embeddable into the documents. And then when you saw that big script running that was going through all the images one by one, what we were really doing was embedding those RDF records into each and every one of the images. And you can see here it is in this with a little bit of extra data put in the end. For example, that this is page number 1 of 72 here. Now you'll notice I just this is a TIFF image, and I brought it up in a text editor because you can embed things into TIFF images. You can embed it into JPEGs, you can embed it into PDFs, you can embed it into everything. Using what we use, EXIF tool, which is freeware, and works wonderfully, and as you can see, it works very fast, because we just did 72 images, and how long did that script take to run, along with the OCR. It's a very efficient program, does a good job, and then the entire all of the essential elements of the bibliographic record, along with individual information on the image itself, is embedded in there forever. So each one of these images has kind of a holographic record of the entire document that it's a part of, as well as what part of the document it is. So, for example, 50 years from now, when we're all gone and somebody comes across a weird archival directory in some computer they're about to throw away, and they come across all of these images, there is a way for the entire collection of, well, we've got over 9,000 documents, 2.5 million images. The entire collection can reassemble itself from the actual images themselves. When you're talking about archiving, considerations like this are absolutely essential. And like I said, we do it with freeware. It's not expensive. It's free. So all that's there. You'll also see what we have here now is for each one of the images, we have 3 files. There's the original TIFF formatted image that we're going to keep, and that's going to be in our archive. There is a text image, which is not particularly good looking, but it's about 99 point something% accurate. You can read most of this, and of course the formatting is completely done, so it's not particularly good that way, but it's ready to be used. And we also have a small PDF image, and the PDF is it's still a pure image, but it's squashed down, so it can be transported over the internet very easily. So what I'm going to do now is just do a little more processing with this.
Can you speak to how you created that text file? That's the OCR of the TIFF.
That is an OCR of the TIFF that was part of that large batch program that just ran against all the images.
And what program generated that?
The program we use for that is the one piece of software that we're willing to plunk down substantial money for. That is Vividata's OCR shop. And as you saw the batch program going, you may have noticed something called Vividata that was showing itself. Is this the right... Good Lord. No, it's not showing anymore now. Vividata, OCR shop. Somewhat difficult company to work with, sorry. But they gave us, it was expensive software, a couple of $1,000 with a substantial academic discount. But we found it to be pretty bulletproof, and it runs on the command line in Linux. So again, like you saw, it's part of a batch program, and every single one of those TIFF got run through the Vividata program, and it just started pumping out all of the text files, one after the other. And again, I mean, this is the title page, so of course it's going to look a little weirder than some of the others. It's pretty good with accuracy. It's bad with formatting, and it's not 100% accurate, so it's not the kind of thing you want to show to the public. But it's great for a search engine and can be used for that. I just also ran another program which now created an HTML file. And what it did was is it basically took each one of those text files, and this should look slightly familiar because you just saw it before as the text file of page 1. It made some meta headers that the Swishy search engine is going to use, and also is just another little archival thing. This is what this document is, and it's in meta tags now. And it appended each one of those text files to each other. This HTML file is also not going to be seen by the public, but it is what's going to be run through our full text search engine. And this is what the back end uses for full text searching. And then what we do is we use the Swishy search engine, which I'll be talking a little bit about tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Swishy's really good. We use it for a bunch of reasons, among it being that, number one, it creates a secondary indices, if you want, on each one of these fields, so you can do fielded searching as well as the full text. And also it gives a keyword in context result, and one of the things we do is we manipulate the hell out of that keyword in context result, because we also put in these weird little page number tags that should be in XML, I know, but we're having some problems with that. But basically, we take the quick result, the keyword in context result, we make it big, and then we parse it for the first page number we find that's closest to but before the keyword that you searched on. and then we take that page number and we make it part of the URL to retrieve the document. So when you retrieve a document by doing a search on our search engine, you actually get the page on which your search term appeared, which is important when you're searching 500, 600, 700 page documents. You don't want to just get the title page and go fetch. You get a little bit of context that we can provide you by doing a free hack. Again, could it be better? Yeah. But if we had, $100,000 to put into this, we could do wonderful things. We can do this with this. And we think it's pretty good. So at this point, we've got the HTML file to do the search with. We've got whoops. We've got all the documents ready. So what we just need to do now is just make a directory. In fact, I'll talk because it's better for me to talk. All we really need to do now is make a directory on our web server and copy the PDF files into place and copy this HTML file into place and then rerun the full text indexer. And then everything is done. And it's all available on the internet at that point, and this document is completely ready to go at this point right now. Main points to take away. These guys have done a lot of work making the processes work smoothly. Woody talked about cutting, and quite frankly, there was some talk about Woody spending a little too much time with the paper cutter trying to get things done, but it saves so much time. The number of misfeeds we get through this machine, because Woody goes through and checks for those tattle tapes and makes sure that those cuts are smooth every time, cuts down on the amount of rescanning incredibly. These are very durable machines, and we don't get a lot of misfeeds, but a lot of it has to do with the way they're cut and the care they're cut with. Quality control can be done quickly and efficiently by people who are really paying attention to what they're doing. And as you can see, if you have 3 or 4 of these machines, you can scan an awful lot very cheaply. And finally, processing, making an archival image. I've just shown you what we've got here and what everything consists of. I feel pretty confident that we can keep this stuff forever. We need to copy it and share it so that it's durable by having many locations to keep on. But we'll talk about that too over the future. So that's how we did it. You've seen it now. And if you want to do it yourself, this is how to do this kind of material. If anybody's got any ideas of the kinds of stuff you're working on and variations on these themes that may work for you, or just any comments in general, please.
A bit of a technical question, but do you have any storage problems using TIFF images? From what I recall, TIFFs are pretty big.
TIFFs are large-ish. They're not gigantic here. And and that was a compromise with choosing 600 dots per inch. The FDLP was actually talking more in the terms of 800 grayscale, which we're talking megabytes per image. These are kilobytes per image. So it's not bad. They're large because they're images. The PDFs are much smaller because we put some heavy compression on them because they're just for viewing on the internet. But it's not bad. And we have a 3 terabyte server that is about 1/3 full of our stuff at this point. And that includes all of our other collections as well, which includes a lot of large JPEG collections as well. So not too bad.
How large a document does that handle, and how do you handle fold-out? We're talking about maps and wonders.
This will hold, I think it's, 400 pages?
Well, size-wise.
Okay. Well, just as a volume thing, of course, just in case, you may have noticed that when it got to the end of scan, it asked you to continue or to end. And quite often, we reload this thing again and again. Just when it empties, you fill it up again and click continue. So that's fairly straightforward. But the real question we have is, of course, oversize and maps. For that, we do have an overhead scanner. And the overhead scanner is used mostly for things like interlibrary loan and special projects. But to the extent that we have maps and stuff like that, which we do occasionally get, that's how we would do it. We would do that as a special case, and then slip the image in there, and then redo the numbering with a nifty little Perl script, which counts everything up and numbers it sequentially.
Could you talk about the overhead scanner?
Several years ago, we got some educational money, and we managed to get a Minolta PS7000. Everybody likes the Book Guys now, and that seems to be the more popular product, and there are a lot of really good reasons why the Book Guys are much better. The software, the Twain drivers for the Minolta PS7000 are still written for Windows 95, and they won't update it, and it's buggy as heck. But it does work, and the machine itself renders a good image. So for open book scanning, that is what we have, and we make it work, and it works fine. Well, we deal with the driver issues, and it gets done.
And you bought it what year?
Oh, I'm not sure when we got that. We got that, it was less than 10 years ago.
And how much did you pay then?
We paid, that was a $13,000 machine then. The Book Guys are going for about 20. They're fabulous machines. But I mean, this kind of stuff, if I was just buying a machine now to handle the oversized material, we have the Minolta overhead scanner and we use it, and it's great for that. If I was just to buy a machine right now, I would probably buy a couple $100 flatbed, and it would do a good job.
And what's your opinion of like Content DM or the other kind of integrated packages for this?
I think they can be fabulous. To the extent that my understanding of Content DM is it's remotely hosted. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like it. I mean, here's my own madness creeping into this whole thing. My own personal position on this is that information survives through distribution. And as a library and a repository of information, it's the responsibility of this library here to own and maintain our stuff. And it's the responsibility of your institution to own and maintain stuff. And it's the same stuff. That's great, because if a couple of hundred of us, or 300 or 400 of us, how many ABA approved law schools all own a copy of the same stuff, then the information survives, because that's how you do archiving, by making lots of copies and sharing it all over the place. Content DM and every other kind of system like that, they've got good functionality, they've got good access, they're hard to customize for different materials, and I think that's a limitation to those systems. But the real problem I have with them is that they're centralized, and the Content DM people end up owning all the Content DM content. It's like there's so many good, and I always do this, and I feel bad about it later, because things like the Law Library Microfiche Consortium, they do fantastic work. And they're preserving stuff that's really important to preserve, and who else is doing as much of that as they can do? So, please, when I criticize them, please put it in that context. They're doing great work. But at the same time, what is the practical result for all of us subscribers? everybody is a member, but what does that practically mean? It means we're a subscriber just like we subscribe to Lexis and Westlaw. If you don't keep paying your subscription to LLMC, you don't get access to the content anymore. You don't own it. And so you're not a repository for it, and as far as I'm concerned, you're not a library anymore with respect to that stuff. So that's my feelings about Content DM. They're great, but
Have you
please.
considered mirroring this content other places? Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility, and we would like to enter into negotiations with anybody. This is costing us time and effort.
Sure.
We would like to get value back. We don't want money. We want content. I mean, one of the things that we actually sent out as kind of a suggestion a little while ago was we have actually scanned the back file of our law journal. And our dean put out an offer to all of you guys, actually, that we were willing to share and share alike. If you want a full copy of the back file in digital format of the Rutgers Law Journal, you may have one. What we want in return is a copy of yours, and we'll share with anybody. And if you can't do it yourself for whatever reason, of course you can, because you just saw it. But if for whatever reason you can't, we'll do it at cost, and then we'll share. Something like that for this material? Why not? Absolutely. It's the way things should go. Actually, there's a hand over here.
Well, I was just going to throw out, if anyone's thinking about digitization projects or they want to do something that we've done at Florida State for a number of years, and actually goes back to something we were putting it on microfilm earlier, is digitizing the records and briefs of the Florida Supreme Court. And it's actually a project jointly funded by all the law schools in Florida that we all pay in, but we happen to be 2 blocks away from the Supreme Court, so we just basically take a little cart up there and bring things back, scan it, take it back up. But it's been an incredible project in that it's a tremendously valuable and used resource. I mean, when they run the analytics on the law school's website, something about 80% of the traffic that comes to the law school's website is going to the Records and Briefs project. And so it's something that, especially, all the law schools, private and public in Florida, they're happy to pony up the money, and it's not that much because we're basically just, once we get the with a similar hardware setup, we pay, hourly people or student workers. It's very, it's very popular. It's very, been very, received well. So.
Yeah, and that, on the bottom line, that's a really important point. I mean, one of the things that we do is we do New Jersey administrative law. We get it mostly born digital from the Office of Administrative Law. We also do the New Jersey courts, appellate and Supreme Court decisions. With those 2 collections, with lesser volume for other collections we have, like the New Jersey District Court and things, we get 1 million downloads a year pretty reliably every single year. It's not the LII. But for New Jersey, for the specialized stuff we've got, it's a lot of traffic. The dean loves it. Because, we've got Rutgers on top of everything and on the bottom of everything. But it makes a difference. And it's supported because of that. We've got one of the busiest websites, if not the busiest website in Rutgers University on a consistent basis because of this kind of stuff.
Jen, I'm curious about costs, and although student labor is cheap, why not send it out?
Because I think we can do it cheaper. I've never seen a place that will tell me they will do this at a penny a page. I've seen 5 cents if you're willing to wait. I've seen 50 cents for good quality stuff done right away, maybe a quarter nowadays, but I've never seen something that cheap. And, who's willing to work for $2 an hour that's anywhere in this continent, you know. I'm sorry, Judy.
I guess I was thinking about the kinds of things that you were imaging, and you said something, you know, they weren't freely available. Are you able to, if you're digitizing all of the congressional reports and hearings and things like that, are you able to cancel subscriptions to things like LexisNexis Congressional, or?
Not yet. I don't, you know, do we have LexisNexis Congressional?
We're digitizing what we've never paid for. So we haven't seen a big savings in anything but space.
So you're not digitizing the things that you already have through?
Well, I'm sure we have them, there's duplication of everything, but no, what we're digitizing is what we had as a depository. So we never paid for it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I mean, one of the big
Because
ideas.
they already have all of that, so if you're already buying it, it's.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
We can't not get that from, let's say, Lexis and Nestle. Couldn't get us. If we could, that would be a savings.
I mean, one of the ideas about this is that we own this stuff now, and if push comes to shove, which is not happening now, but we're getting pinched hard, and we can see in the future we may have to make choices. We don't have to make a choice of getting rid of access to these materials anymore, because we own it, we have it. And in fact, continuing this collection and project, we've been harvesting from the GPO all the new material as it comes in. And that's getting added to the very same collection in the very same database. So it's going to be continuous from the early 70s, some 60s documents to present. And that's going to be ongoing. We're going to have a really full and rich set of congressional documents that is available to everybody and can be shared. And if anything happens to the GPO, it doesn't matter. Because we're spreading it around and lots of copies are going to keep it safe. So it's a little bit after 2. Thank you very much for your time. We'll keep the machine out if you want to take a look.
Touch.
Don't talk to him. You're bad
Yeah, what you like to do? But I mean, it may not be necessary.
That's why you use this one for a year, and the one that's